Hello and welcome to the Confidence Mastery podcast. Today we have the amazing Scarlett O'Connor joining us. Thank you very much for joining us.
Oh, lovely to be here. Thank you for having me on, Natalie.
It's a pleasure. I'm really excited about this conversation. I'm always excited about conversations anyway, because I love to have interesting conversations with people. And I really like the way that we've been connected through through the most randomest of ways. And then it turns out that we have a person in common.
Yeah, how strange is that? What a small world it actually is, right?
It is a very small world. We'll talk a bit more about that later. Would you like to give the listeners an introduction to yourself, because you will tell it perfectly?
Well,
Yeah,
yeah,
who
hi
you like?
everyone.
We'll do it blind. I do it blind date style. Who you are, what you do, yeah, etc.
Okay, so yeah, hi everyone. I'm Scarlett O'Connor. I'm a trauma-informed life and business coach. So really helping professionals to get unstuck, to become the best version of them and achieve their dreams. So yeah, that's kind of me. I'm also a 2 times world champion athlete, bodybuilding athlete, and I'm the founder of the company called Scars to Strength. Uh, is that a good start?
Yeah, of course it is. There's so many things I want to dig into there. And I was having a conversation with somebody else recently about trauma and how we've all had some form of trauma in our lives. Whether we choose to acknowledge it or not is another matter. What was it specifically about that that made you want to help people overcome what they've experienced?
Well, like you mentioned, that Natalie, like most people, a lot of people in this world have been through like what we call like big T trauma, right? And they're really aware of it. And then many other people have been through trauma and are completely unaware of it. Now, I don't know why, but since I was a little girl, I had this, and I guess it's my voice, but people might call it God. Some people, everybody has a different uh puts a different meaning to it. But since I was a little girl, I've told myself my pain has a purpose. And I went through some pretty tough things as a kid, and that it was having that voice and knowing that my pain had a purpose that quite often made me get up sometimes and made me continue and look towards the light, and I guess feel motivated about the future and excited about what the future would bring. But then I had a child at 16 and became a mum. And so my priority really was to earn money, to provide in all the ways I never had. And he became my purpose, and he became what drove me to work hard and gain a great career. And then I went through more trauma as an adult. And I was assaulted in 2015, even, and my face was destroyed. It left me with some pretty deep scars on my face. And then 2 years later, I lost my dad, and doing what I'd always done, I got up and got on with it. I repressed how I was feeling. And 8 weeks after losing my dad, I crashed my car into a tree at 50 miles an hour. My body gave up before I did, and I experienced true burnout. Now, thankfully, I woke up from a coma. Do have these, as you can see on here, some big scars across my head, and it was like all stapled up. So, yeah, despite having the severe scars across my head, I'm very lucky, grateful to be alive today. And it was after that that I really went on a journey to understand how do these things impact us, because I knew after that I needed to come back stronger. But what I also realized at that point of almost losing my life was that I wasn't really happy. And I had a lot to be grateful for: a beautiful son, our own home, lots of amazing things, and great reasons to be grateful and to be happy. But inside I wasn't. And I realized part of that was because I was never serving what I believe is my purpose, which is to help other people. And so that was something that needed to change. I needed to change careers. I needed to go on a path to become a healer, to become a coach. And it was along studying, actually, and learning about how our brains work. I've spent the last 7 years studying neuroscience. How does trauma and the adversities we face impact our brain? Why do some people achieve things and others not? Like, I became obsessed with human behavior. Like, I wanted to know, like, why am I the way I am? Because I've done things in the past that I don't really understand, made choices that I don't really understand. And so I wanted to know, like, I wanted to know about myself at a deeper level. And I also wanted to know why, well, yeah, some people achieve success and others don't. Why some people have got confidence and others haven't. Like, how does that really work? And it was upon really studying the brain, how the adversities we go through affect us, what trauma does to us, that I realized that this is a big reason that many people are stuck in life, because quite simply, like, we don't get taught how our brain works. We don't get taught what an amazing machine this is or how to use it. And so many people are living life as an adult with lots of responsibilities and lots of things to do, and don't actually understand how their brain works or how to get the most out of themselves. So yeah, I really went on a journey to understand it. And I think that's one of the biggest gaps in our education system. And the reason that lots of professionals, yeah, don't understand how trauma actually impacts us, affects us.
And a lot of that happens as a child, and then we take that on, don't understand it,
Yeah.
and then as we grow and become adults, we do things, and like you say, why am I doing this? When there's actually a deeper reason, but we don't know why, and then we keep going through these cycles of like destructive behavior that doesn't serve
Yes.
anybody.
Yeah, completely. And I think what a lot of people tend to do as well is think like, oh, well, I'm like justify their actions or justify their reactions or justify why they don't do something, or because, and again, because they see it through their world and their beliefs. And I was speaking to a client recently, and she was studying with the feeling of like feeling remorseful, like just that she actually struggles with that. And it's really clear that's because she holds so much anger. So she's not connected to the other emotions. Like, there's a lack of empathy there. And that's not because she's not a nice person. She's an absolute wonderful person. But she's been through a lot and she's carrying it all with her. Like, and she's been carrying it with her since she was a child. But again, what she said, and what most people tend to do, is go, well, I haven't had it as somebody else. My stuff isn't that bad.
Yeah.
Somebody else has had it. Somebody else has had it worse than me. It's like, yeah, but you don't live somebody else's life. You haven't lived their life. You've lived yours. And like when you're a child, like when you're a baby, when you're a young child, you've never been through anything. So the first time that you experience emotions, the first time that you feel angry, it doesn't matter if at 30, 40, 50, 60, whatever age you are, you look back at it and go, wow, you know, there's no reason for me to be angry, or like, actually, I've had stuff happen in my adulthood that makes me more angry. Well, the chances are you're still carrying it because as a child, it made you bloody angry because you were a kid. And anger is just one of the most powerful emotions that we have. And when we're carrying that stuff, it impacts everything. It impacts us from ever being the best people that we can be.
It's not a very nice one to hold on to either, is it? I've had a long period of my time I was very, very angry. And I'd have this red mist come, and once that red mist came, like that's it. Like there's no getting through to me. Luckily, or not luckily, well, yeah, luckily, luckily for other people, and I don't get that angry anymore. That red mist doesn't come because I've learned to channel my emotions in the right way and identify, okay, well, why was I feeling all of that in the first place? Because otherwise you can't fix it if you don't know where it technically originates from. How do you help people to identify where their trauma begins so you can start to heal?
So I've actually released a program on this because I used to do this one-to-one with clients. So over the like studying and learning neuroscience, qualifying as NLP and hypnotherapy master, learning about the impacts of narcissistic abuse and how that impacts a child, I developed a program called Master Emotions Healing. And I was just working with clients one-to-one in this for a long time, and it's transformational. I mean, it transformed my own life, transformed my own life. it allowed me to let go of the anger that I was similar to you, Natalie, and just carried it my whole life, and it was impacting many things. But yeah, it's transformed each of my clients' lives, and it's really a catalyst to help them become their best version of them. So this year I actually released it into an online program. So it's something now that people can go through without having to work with me, without having to spend hours with me on a phone or over Zoom while we identify and get back to it. But a great way to know, usually, like if you are carrying stuff from your childhood, is that if you can think of something that happened in your childhood, and when you think of that thing happening, it comes back to you vividly, then the chances are it's got emotion attached to it. And that's the reason you can remember it vividly. Because it's the same as, I imagine that you've got things in your childhood that make you really happy. And even though you might not even, it might be difficult to even think about what you did yesterday, recall what you did yesterday or last week, you can somehow recall that memory immediately and vividly. And when you talk about whatever that thing is, you'll feel happy and excited, and you'll just go straight back into that moment. And that's because it's got happy emotion there. And it's the same with negative emotions. If they're stuck to memories, then they stay stuck there. And so if you're thinking, oh yeah, have I got stuff? Am I holding on to stuff? Then that's a really great way to recognize, like, okay, yeah, there's memories back there that I can recall, like whether you're, like I said, 30, 40, 50, 60, that you can recall a memory from all those years ago. And when you recall it, it's not nice. It takes you back to it vividly, brings back that emotion. Then yeah, that can be a great way. And it's really important to do this, because what I realize now is that this is how generations of trauma continue. This is why it doesn't, like, I like to think like I'm nothing like my parents, right? And made a commitment to be nothing like them, and I've achieved great things, and I have been nothing like them. But I was like you in that I carried all this anger with me, and carrying that anger did mean that I would get upset when I didn't need to, that my son would get the brunt of that. That I would shout or get angry over the smallest little thing, which in reality is a tiny thing. But it was all because I was carrying this anger with me. It wasn't because I'm a bad person. It wasn't because it's just because I was carrying this anger with me, and it shows up in so many ways. Like I was speaking to a client recently, and they get real bad road rage all the time. Now, the reality is, it isn't really those people on the road that's really frustrating them. It's that they're carrying stuff. They're carrying so much stuff with them that it comes out. It comes out on their employees when their employees don't do good, right, or don't do what they say. Instead of recognizing that their employees are human beings, and there might be loads of reasons they haven't done it, and not just because, I don't know, they don't listen or they don't respect you, or whatever those meanings are you put into it. It comes out. These emotions can come out in so many ways if they're being bottled up.
I totally relate to that. So much stuff. And then it comes out, you take it out on the wrong people, and that ends up affecting like your relationships. And then you end up even more miserable and more angry because you don't feel like you're supported or surrounded by like good people. And that's how you can then end up like in the wrong crowd doing the wrong things, which is part of what happened to me. But then, taking responsibility for not necessarily if something's happened to you, but how you respond to it, I think is
100%
thing to being able to then like process it and release it.
100%. Because you think as well, like most of the things that we like get affected by is like because of what we're going through or because of somebody else, and that taking responsibility is so key, because when we get angry, frustrated, or all we're doing is affecting somebody else. Like we affect ourselves, which leads, like you said, ourselves lead to self-sabotaging behavior, to not feeling into well-being, can lead to depression, anxiety. But the person on the other side of that, like if that's somebody you love and care for, particularly, like what a shame to then be the cause of what's then affecting them.
Yep.
And that's why I think it's really like this is the cause of generations of trauma. It's not being self-aware. It's not understanding like your own stuff, how you're programmed, and also having the awareness of how your shit impacts other people.
Yeah. It's that like the cycle of abuse, isn't it?
Yeah. And it is, and the thing is, like, I'm not an abuser, right? I'm not a bad person. I know that 100%. And despite carrying this anger and maybe getting it defensive when I didn't want to get defensive, or being short fused when I didn't really want to be short fused, the reality is that would have still injured my son. Like, that will still injure my relationships. That will still, it doesn't matter if I'm a good person or not. If I'm not aware of my own self and able to show up as my best self and not actually hurt other people, like unintentionally. And that's what it is, isn't it? Most of it's unintentional. It's unconscious patterns, unconscious behaviors, which run us, which we don't understand. And therefore, they just cause us damage. They cause us damage, they cause others damage, and pain.
And then the cycle just carries on and on and on. And then then there's a knock-on effect.
Carries on.
Then nobody talks to anyone, and everyone's miserable and lonely.
Oh, and it's so sad. Like the amount of marriages, relationships, families that break down because of this. When actually, if our I really do think a lot of it has to do with our education system. And if our education system was better, if this was included, like the people actually left school with a self-awareness and understanding how their brain's programmed, then they would have more awareness and understanding for others as well.
The school system isn't made for that, though. It's made to churn out the workforce. So it's getting this to the younger generation in another way, because it's like trying to teach entrepreneurship. Like, that's not going to work in a school. Financial education, there's a reason they don't teach it.
Yeah. But isn't that sad?
Yeah.
Isn't that sad? Like, so many people in the world are struggling, like whether it be financially, mentally, emotionally, physically. Like, so many people are struggling in the world. But the reality is, like, you have a brain. Like, everything you do every day is because your brain is like, I always refer to it as like a computer. And yet most people don't understand how their computer operates.
No. They've
just got all these responsibilities and shit to deal with and stuff to face, and they don't actually understand how they're operating.
No. Well, if you think about it, you put on a laptop, you put your antivirus on, you do your restart, your updates and new software, etc. So if you do that for something that you work on, why would you not do that to yourself?
But it's most people don't even have that understanding.
No.
They don't think about why they do certain things or don't do certain things, or why they can't do something. There's no awareness of even understanding that the brain is like a computer.
It's the most powerful
I spent most of my life
in the world, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. Which is now why I'm so passionate about teaching this and sharing this. And this is now my like new mission in life, because I spent most of my life in that place. I mean, I carried all these emotions with me, completely unaware of how much damage they were doing to me, unaware what they were doing to other people. Like, I had no idea before, like, even what anxiety was. And because I've always been, I guess, like a bit of a warrior, like get up, get on with it, set goals, high achiever, I would have never thought that I suffered with anxiety. I'd heard the word a few years back, and it was like, oh yeah, I know other people do, but I would never have that. Like, and then I realized, like, along my journey, that because my mum kicked me out when I was 12, And she said, I don't want you anymore. And that was it. She kicked me out, she closed the door behind me, and she never looked back.
Yeah.
Now, I knew really that I had this pain I was carrying, but I had no idea of how much that pain was hurting me. And it wasn't something I wanted to face, right? Because as far as I was concerned, I'm all right. Like, look at me. I'm achieving great things. I've got my own home, I've got a fast car, I've got money in the bank. Things are good. I'm a good mum. Like, so I didn't want to face it. But what I've realized, like, during the journey, is that I had a fear of abandonment, a real fear of abandonment. And that fear of abandonment showed up all the time. And I did suffer with extreme anxiety. I think I spent most of my life with PTSD, but completely unaware, because I had no idea what PTSD was. I didn't know how these things affect us. I didn't know any of this stuff. It was so, like, I think there's just a big gap in, like, awareness for people.
But that must have been difficult to have dealt with, especially at that age.
Very, yeah. And that's what I mean. It continued to be. It wasn't there. It wasn't ever,
Yeah.
like, I didn't know it was there. I just didn't realize how much it was hindering me.
How did you then process that and learn to, I suppose, not live with it, but deal with the emotions that come with that?
That's a good question. I mean, at the time, I think I ran for a few years when I was a teenager in a bit of shock with it all. Didn't really, I remember the moment that my mum, the moment my mum kicked me out, I was in shock. I was in absolute shock. I turned up a few days after I'd been kicked out, and she'd said I could go and collect my stuff. And I turned up to we lived in flats at the time, and I turned up to the flat, and there was a note on the door, and it said, your stuff's in the bin room. And I remember just looking at it, and I cried at that point. I was like, why would she do that to me? Like, why would she put my stuff in a communal bin room? And I've walked along, and as you're going along the corridors, you can kind of look back to the houses. And as I'm walking along, I've looked back and I can see the window, what was my front room window. And my mum is stood there with her new boyfriend and his kid, and they're all just giving me the finger. And I can't hear obviously what they're saying, but I remember just looking around then, like, is this actually happening? Like, is this actually happening? And yeah, it was very painful. I tried taking my own life when I was a teenager a couple of times because I couldn't, wanted to escape the pain. But I've realized over the years that self-love is really important, that learning to take the positives, which most people, like, you hear that, don't you? Take the positives from this shit situation you've been through.
Yeah.
Most people are like, what?
You don't realize it when you're going through.
No. And that's the thing, when you're going through it, it's very difficult to take the positives. But the moment that you can, anything that you can take, like, it doesn't matter how small it is, if there's something that you can take out of it that's positive, then that, like, I really do think that's key. That's really helpful. And I recognize lots of positives along the way. Like, my mum's a narcissist. I didn't know that. Again, awareness. So the word I had for my mum for most of my life was CUNT, which is probably the only time I use that word, but I didn't know what else to call it. I didn't know what else to call it. Yeah, and she is, right? But I that was the only word I had for her, because I had no understanding of any of this. Like, I now understand that chances are she suffers with NPD and narcissistic personality disorder. Even just understanding that, like, I think awareness in life is so important. But yeah, understanding, like, who she is, having that word, being able to understand narcissism, and then how has that affected me as a person then? Like, how has that affected how I show up in the world? Like, this podcast is about confidence. Well, I didn't have confidence for years. Like, people would have thought I did because I was a fighter. So people thought I was confident because I was probably running in fight mode with PTSD for most of my life.
Putting a mask on.
From the outside, it looks like she's confident. Putting a mask on and getting it become a coping mechanism. It's like a way to deal with it. Guards up, right? I can take on the world, right? And so people think you're confident. but I was never confident inside. And even understanding that, like how does being raised by a narcissist affect our self-esteem, our self-worth, our confidence? Recognizing that, I remember reading a book actually. I can't remember the name of it. Gonna have to find it after this. I remember reading a book at the beginning of this journey, and I opened up the book, and it was talking about the impacts of narcissistic abuse as a kid. And it was like I saw myself in this book and on this paper, and I was like, oh my God, somebody who understands me. Because this is me, and until that point, I think I always felt so different, like so lost, so different to everybody else, and like nobody could understand me. And I remember reading that book and just being like, boom, like, wow, shit, this is me on paper, which means somebody else has been here, which means somebody else knows what this feels like, which means I'm not alone, right, in this, that somebody else knows what it's like to be here.
I think unfortunately there is an awful lot of that kind of thing that goes on, and like the people on the receiving end don't understand it because it's not so widely or hasn't been so widely spoken about. I am seeing a lot more people speak out about things like that now. I don't know if that's something to do with the circle of people I'm moving now or what, but I'm definitely seeing there's like a shift in energy for that.
I think we have to be careful with that as well, because I remember when I first started finding out about narcissism, and I joined all these like different Instagram pages or different social media groups, and anybody who's doing that, like, just a fair warning, be careful what you're consuming, because Jesus, some of this stuff can make it so much worse. Like, it can make it so much, and you could be looking outside thinking everybody is a narcissist, and everybody's
pick up on the tiniest little thing one person does when
and the reality is we're all human beings, right? And I seen some at the end the other day, actually, and it was on a page about narcissism, and it was this lady, and she was saying about how, I don't know, if a guy acts like this, or he acts like that, or he acts like this, or he acts like that, then that's it, I'm out of here. He was like, well, I think years ago, to be honest, that would have been me, right? Because I didn't understand humans, didn't understand us, and why we do act or react in certain ways, and why sometimes we do feel anxious, why we might feel indecisive, why we might show love in a certain way and not maybe the way that somebody is wanting it to be shown. And I read this the other day, and I was like, geez, if everybody thought like that, nobody would be in a good relationship, because you'd be pushing everybody away. Because the reality is, like you mentioned at the beginning, Natalie, like pretty much everybody's been through trauma. And
in one form or another, and whether that, and what you said about your client, and or nobody or other people have bigger problems. Well, it doesn't matter, because your problems are still relevant to you in your life and what you're living through. Yes, there will always be someone going through worse, but there'll always be someone going through better. That doesn't take away the fact that what you're going through is an issue for you, and you need to process and deal with that. So you obviously put on that fight mask and thought, like, I don't know, fuck you, I'm gonna be successful anyway. So you took yourself through that in the way that you knew how to at that time. You had your son, you became a great mum, and you were successful in your career, and then obviously burnt out to the point of real trauma. And it's so strange. Like, I can understand a lot of what it's. I had a car accident in Barbados, and like, it just, luckily I didn't even go to hospital, and I don't know, I probably had concussion. Just remember the car rolling over, facing the other way, and like, I was on my way to the gym 8 o'clock in the morning, hit a pothole, and climbed out of it. And I don't think I processed that for a very long time, because I climbed out of the car like these five guys came over and the hire car company bought me a new car and I drove home.
Yeah.
But actually what could have happened could have been a lot worse. So thinking about all of, those things and how you process it, you've been through a lot of training and a lot of learning to understand how your brain works in order to then help other people. So what was the driving factor? Obviously, you recovered from the coma, which is fantastic. I'm glad you're alive.
Me too.
And to help share this with other people, because if we don't talk about these sorts of things, there will be people that just remain stuck.
Yeah. Well, I think that was what the catalyst was, because I spent like my whole entire life with a lot of pain, and it really affected me, affected my relationships, it affected my mental, emotional health. It, like, whilst I might have been achieving some great things, like it was hindering me in so many ways. And I always felt so alone. Like I didn't have friends around me or other people, thankfully, who had a narcissistic mother and kicked them out or abandoned them, right? So didn't have people around me who could relate. And so yeah, I just always felt so different. And then it was after the coma that I wanted to understand human behavior. I wanted to understand myself. And when I started going on that journey, that's when I realized that there's so much pain in the world, and that I really wasn't alone. Like I started joining these forums, narcissistic mothers, for instance, and it was like, wow, there's people who are, I don't know, 60, 70, 80 years old, and are just realizing at this point that their mothers are narcissists, and that they've been affected their whole entire lives. And it's stopped them from ever being in loving relationships. It's hindered their health, it's hindered their self-esteem, their self-worth, their confidence. And they're only just becoming aware of it. And I spent a long time understanding, okay, so this is narcissism, this is why somebody becomes narcissistic, this is the effects on a child. But what I couldn't find was, well, how do you do anything about it? And it was like, well, there's a gap. Okay, so great, right, can find out all this stuff, can get really angry or happy that you've become aware of it. That's great, but what do you now do? So great, got it. So, and I looked around and I was like, so what are the options at this point? Well, you either go to a doctor and you get prescribed medication, which I've never done that, despite the adversities I've faced with. And I think that when we're on, not that I have done, but many of my clients have, when you're on medication, it doesn't allow you to develop the coping skills in order to be able to overcome that adversity and others in the future. And let's be honest, you face adversities all the time in life. So you need to have coping skills.
Yeah.
You need to know, right? And then the other option was to go to a counsellor. And I'd never found personally that was very helpful for me either. That actually going back over stuff, and a counsellor getting you to go back to the time it happened and what you felt and what you went through. And I found that really traumatizing, if anything. So I was like, okay, so this is the options I can see. This is the I know about. They're not an option that I think helps actually to overcome this and to increase your self-worth, your self-esteem, your confidence, to let go of this pain you've been carrying. So yeah, I made it a mission of mine to find out how do we do it, and so that I could be in a position to actually help others, like not just help them to become aware, but actually help them to let it go, to learn how to love themselves. Yeah,
because we all need to
and
do that.
We do, and that, that's something else that's really sad, because I think if you had asked me years ago, do you love yourself? I'd have probably gone, yeah. I mean, I'm proud. I've achieved a lot. I've got, yeah. I didn't. No, I didn't. And I realize now through everybody I work with, and even just conversations with people all the time, that this is something many people in the world struggle with. This is not this is a problem. I met a guy the other day, actually, and he said, I don't understand how I could ever love myself. I've made too many mistakes.
That is such a shame. We all make mistakes, but that's part of
We
what makes you
do.
who you are. And as long as you're learning from them and not continually repeating the same mistakes, I mean, you might do for a while, but if you come to a point and you realize it, and he's obviously realized it,
Yeah, yeah.
take the next step.
But this is the thing, isn't it? I don't know what adult. You're an adult because you're 18. You're an adult because you're 21. What does that really mean?
What
Because
does it
people
mean?
think then because they're an adult that they're not meant to make mistakes. They're not okay for making mistakes. That it's like, well, what happened? Because you were at one point a child, right? And then you suddenly became an adult. You suddenly had all these responsibilities. You're suddenly living a life, doing things you've never done before, faced with situations you've never been in before, but yet you think you should have all the answers and be perfect, whatever this idea of perfect
Doesn't
is,
exist.
doesn't exist. And it's we're all humans, like we're all learning. It's like you said then, the most powerful thing we can do in life is take responsibility for what is ours and learn from it.
Yeah.
The more time that you spend beating yourself up because of the mistakes you've made, the more likelihood you're, one, probably going to make it again, and two, you're going to self-sabotage, going to put yourself in a bad place, like, and that ain't helping you, which ain't helping anybody.
No,
Like,
just a very, very poor cycle of bad shit. But there's a lot of good that can come from it. So you obviously mentioned at the beginning that you have been an amazing bodybuilder, competed and won numerous competitions. What got you into that?
this as well. So I started exercising in my 20s. I realized that I was quite unhappy with my body, and I was getting a bit of a ribbon from a guy I was working with at the time who was about 20 years older than me, and he was just very fit and I was very unfit. I was a party girl, right? I was a mum, but on the weekends when I didn't have my son,
Yeah.
or the nights when I didn't have my son, I was a party girl. And so that was when I began to get fit, and I spent 10 years or so working out, going to the gym, initially because I wanted to do something about my body and my baby belly. But what I soon realized after I started exercising, despite how hard it was, is that I felt great for it. That helped me to improve my confidence. That helped me to improve my self-esteem. I mean, the benefits are huge.
Huge. I
And
bang on
they're
about it all
huge.
the time.
There's like, you feel so much better, and it's even more rewarding on the days you don't want to do it. When you make yourself get up and do it anyway, it's like, damn, yeah, come on, if I can do that on the day I don't want to, you
What
know what
else
I
can I
mean?
do?
Like, what else can I do? Yeah, it's fantastic for increasing self-esteem, for increasing your confidence, for increasing your self-worth, for feeling great mentally, emotionally. Like, it's a really great tool. And then after my accident, so I couldn't work out for about 8 months because of the head injury. And so when that January came and I knew I could get back to the gym, it was like, right, okay, back to the gym, I can get back to this. And I said to myself that January, right, I'm coming back stronger this year, but I'm going to do things differently. And I knew that I wanted to change careers. I had a great career in IT, and it was fantastic. It wasn't that there was anything wrong with my career. I just didn't feel like I was living my purpose. And so it's like, right, okay, I know I need to change careers. That isn't going to happen overnight. So I'm going to start working on that. But if I believe that you can overcome anything, right, and you can make your dreams possible, then and I had done that, right? I'd already done that, gone from nothing to earning 6 figures, gone from like no education to great career. I'd gone from what I say scars to strength throughout my life. But I was back with scars. This time I had scars and staples across my head, and I wasn't in my power. I had been knocked back down. And so I knew that if I wanted to go out there helping people, then I needed to first become my best self.
Yeah.
We were saying about this before the podcast, actually, Natalie, about how sometimes you don't know your how.
Mm-hmm.
You just know, you just know,
You know the
right,
end
what it
goal,
is.
and you'll figure it
You know the
out.
end goal. You figure it out, and things come into your path, right? And that's how your how becomes clearer. Like, you don't need to know. You just need to begin taking steps, begin taking actions. Right? I knew 100% I was going to come back stronger. I knew I was going to change careers. I didn't know exactly how it was all going to work at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And so I initially started with, right, okay, let's understand then what careers are out there. How can I help people? That was the first thing I'm doing now. And it was like, right, well, if I want to be at my best and I want to be at my strongest, I need to get back to the gym. I haven't been able to go for 8 months. I can go again now. And so I got back to the gym. And then a guy in the gym actually said to me, you lift a lot of weight. You lift pretty heavy. You should power lift. And I went home that day. I had no idea, right? I've gone to the gym for me for the last 10 years. I don't know what powerlifting is. And I come back and I Googled it. And I was like, powerlifting. And I looked and I was like, oh no, it's just not for me. And then I saw this competition and it said, it was in Bristol, right, which is the city I lived in. Fit mum, £25 to enter. Right? And I went, fit mum. I've spent 10 years on working on this body. I'm a fit mum. Right? I had a six-pack at that point, which, oh my God, go back 10 years ago, I'd never have even thought that was possible. Like, had a saggy baby belly and just couldn't have even, it was like a dream, which came true through work and effort, like working hard towards it. And so I sat there and I was like, okay, fuck it. I'm going to do it. So I entered, and then the next day I got a call from the lady who runs it. And she was like, hey, you've entered this competition. So have you got your eye walk? Have you got your bikini? Have you got your tan booked? Have you got your... And I was on the end of the call and I'm like, oh my God, you're talking another language. Like, it's like I've just heard Japanese down the phone. I don't know what you're saying to me. And she was like, pardon? You realize it's in 5 weeks' time? And I was like, what is? And she was like, the bodybuilding competition you entered. My jaw dropped, like, pardon? I entered some fit mum thing. So next minute I was investing £50 to go and spend an hour with her to find out everything I would have to do. And my mind was blown because I realized at that point I was going to have to go on prep. And that meant not having alcohol, not having chocolate, not having the things I enjoyed. It meant I'd have to stick to a diet, do all this cardio, which I didn't really do. And at the end of it, I'd have to get tanned up and I'd stand on stage in nothing but a bikini and I'd show off my muscle, which terrified me. But as much as it terrified me, it really excited me. And I was like, okay, this is it. This is my thing. And I'm going to do this for me. Like, I'd already made a commitment. I'm going to come back stronger. And it was, eventually, we just don't know how sometimes, right? How we're going to do it. But the how became clearer at that point. It was like, yeah, I'm going to do it for me. And I'm not going to let fear hold me back. And at that point, I was studying how does the brain work. I was beginning to understand that what I'd been through as a child had impacted my self-worth. It had impacted my confidence. It did impact my self-esteem. And I was learning all of this. And it was like, wait there, I'm not letting it. Like, I'm not going to stay as I've always been.
No.
I'm not letting that or what I've been through hinder me. So yeah, I decided to start competing, and I thought I'd do it the once and then that would be the end of it.
You get addicted.
But I enjoyed it far more than I imagined I would. I enjoyed it far more than I imagined I would. So that was it. It was like, right, okay, I'm doing this again. And then I found a competition actually in the UK. If you won in the UK, they would take you out to America. And at the same time that happened, actually at my first show, Nathan was there. And Nathan said to me, you've got to do this again.
Yeah.
And I was like, no, I'm just going to do it the once. Do you know what I mean? It's just... And he was like, no, you're going to do it again, but I'll coach you. And a couple of weeks later, we spoke on the phone and I was like, okay, so I've seen a competition. If you win, they'll take you out to America. And I didn't tell anybody else, but I remember saying to him on the phone, I know it sounds crazy, Nathan, but I want to go from a coma to Miss Atlas. Like, and he was like, well, then we'll make it happen.
Yeah.
It's like,
And you did it.
like, yeah. In 2019, I went out and yeah, I won and become Miss Atlas, which was amazing. And having I think that's really like important in life, actually, is or certainly helps you to achieve things, is when you have somebody behind you who believes in you.
Mm-hmm. It
Like,
makes
who
a
has the
huge
tools,
difference.
knowledge,
Yeah.
information that you don't have as well. Like, I know nothing about competing. I know nothing about bodybuilding or prep or any of that stuff. And Nathan had all of the information I didn't have. He had all the tools that I didn't have, and he believed in me.
Yeah.
And those things combined, like, yeah,
I think that's a
I'm
really,
so
really
grateful.
good point, actually. Like the people you surround yourself with and the people who help you make such a difference. Because if you
Huge.
don't have that support in those moments where you start doubting yourself or you want to give in or you want to like hide under the duvet for a week, like they don't let you. And
Yeah.
that's the sign of a good coach, even like a good friend, a good mentor, like having that kick up the bum and a cuddle at the same time sometimes is what you need.
Oh, I love that. Kick up the bum and a cuddle.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, well, I'd have loved to have gone from coma to Miss Atlas on my own. But the reality is I didn't know everything that Nathan knows.
Mm,
And even if I had, I'd still like, no, it wouldn't have been possible without having him as well. Like, it took me to say, right, this is my goal, this is what I want to do. And it's taken me to actually do the work and show up every day and make it
yeah.
happen.
Yeah.
But if it hadn't been for having him at my side with the information, the tools, the support to help me make it happen,
Yeah.
it wouldn't have happened. I mean,
And
so
look how
I'm
happy you
so
look.
grateful. Oh, I know. I'm so grateful to have come up to for that to have happened. Do you know what I mean? For him to be in my life, to have been in my life, to have helped make that possible. I don't think I'll ever be able to thank him enough.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yes. Oh, well, and
Right.
that's how we know each other,
Yeah.
right now.
Yeah. Like,
Nathan,
how random is that? We have the same coach. Like,
we have the same coach. What a great coach to have.
he really is. And like, he listens to everything. Like, I
Yeah.
just, bleh.
Yeah, well, I've actually known Nathan since I was about 19. And I spent for what, over 10 plus years as his friend. And I always used to look at him and think, oh God, I could never do that. Fair play to you. I could never. Oh, you live like a different world than I do. I like to party and
Yeah.
drink and I like to do my thing. And could have never would have never seen that coming. That
Well,
actually
that's the
I'd
beauty
end
of
up.
life, though, isn't it? Like, it takes you on a different path and a different journey, and then like you've seen this from somebody else and realize
Yeah.
actually you can do that.
Yeah, and I watched him. He when we were about 19, he was a Tyler, and then in his 20s, he was suddenly this worldwide muscle champion who was being sponsored by companies like BSN. And I remember I was so inspired by him, so inspired by his work ethic, by what he achieved,
Yeah.
by how he stuck to his dreams and made them happen. And so, yeah, I think that's something else that was really lovely, is that I worked with and work with somebody who inspires me,
Yeah.
who I feel inspired by. Like, it's not just any old coach who knows what they're doing. It's a man who I've looked up to for
Yeah.
years, who I admire and am inspired by him, because I know that, and I've watched that journey, is it didn't just come overnight. So
Those things
yeah,
don't happen overnight, do they? And that's really such a beautiful thing. You've seen him
yeah.
progress and then got help from him to help you progress.
Oh,
One of my clients said that to me recently, actually, that he's been with me from the beginning, from about five or 6 years ago. And it was about 2 weeks ago, I think, he said that he actually said, obviously, I've been with you from the beginning and I've seen your growth and the value you bring. And like that was like, if I cried, like I would have brought tears to my eyes.
oh. Oh, how beautiful.
So it's nice to know that people do take inspiration from others and then work with them, and don't, like, you didn't look at him and think, oh, you know, you're so much better than me or whatever, because actually it's a different journey, and then valuing the support because you've seen him grow over that period of time as well and make things happen.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And yeah, to have, like, to be inspired so much by him and then have him supporting me was, oh, it's just such a gift. It's just such a gift. But what you said, I think it's really important as well, about you just never know where life's going to take you.
Mm-hmm.
And too many people stay stuck on that.
Yeah.
Right, worrying so much about the future or what's going to happen or how they're going to make something happen or where it's going to, like, we'd never know. We spoke before the podcast about COVID. Like, you just never know. It doesn't matter how much you try to predict the future. You never know what's going to happen or
well,
what way life's
we
going to
couldn't
take
have
you.
predicted that, but I think the world elites did.
Yeah.
That's
My
another
coma.
conversation though.
I would have never thought that I'd end up in a coma
No.
and almost lose my life. Like, it's really sad because I actually looked up a stat the other day for my Facebook group, because I was just talking about why it's so important to live life. And I read it was like, I don't know, third week in January or something this year, 18,000 people in the UK died alone. And that's just a normal stat, average week. And that's for a number of different causes. Like,
Yeah.
but 18,000 people in 1 week in the UK. That's average numbers. Like, everybody seems to think they've got loads of time or like worrying about what's going to happen. Like, you literally get one life and you have no idea. No idea. In 2017, I could have gone to work that day and that could have been it for me.
Mm-hmm.
My son would have no mum and my life would have never continued. It would have just happened and that would be it. And everybody would be moving on, life would be carrying on, and that would be it, over. And we just never know. Like, so I know that your podcast is around confidence, and this is how you gain, like, confidence is like a muscle, right? You need to build
Mm-hmm.
it, you need to take
Mm-hmm.
action, you need to believe in yourself and make it happen, right? And if there's any kind of motivation, like certainly for me after almost losing my life, it's like, life is for living.
Yeah. Life's too
Like,
short to be miserable. That's one of my
life's too
mantras.
short. Yeah, I love that. And one of the lines I say is, it's never too late. So the amount of people I meet and they go, oh, if I'd done something 10 years ago, and it's like, well, are you living and breathing now? Do it now.
Do it now.
Stop waiting. Otherwise, in 10 years' time, if you're lucky to still be here and be alive, right? Let's be realistic, not horrible, realistic.
Yeah.
Then you're going to be looking back again and saying, oh, if I'd done this 20 years ago, if I'd done that, like, stop waiting. Stop.
Exactly. Stop and just do it. Just give
Just
it a
do it.
go. That's exactly why I came to Mallorca, why I've been traveling. I've been like all over different places in the world by myself, because if I was waiting around for other people, it'd never happen.
Exactly. Yes.
And like I say, life's too short. So just go and find a way. And it's doing those kind of things, getting out of your comfort zone, that does build your confidence. And, you know, if you can go from thinking, oh, that's not for me, and to winning the title and having the confidence to stand up there and up in a bikini, then anybody can do anything.
Absolutely, they can. Like, they absolutely can. And that's what I try to say. Like I've shared a couple of snippets of my life journey on here, and I've been through a lot of adversity. Yeah. If I can overcome those things, if I can overcome those fears, those beliefs, like, I'm telling you that, like, if you're listening to this and things are holding you back, you can overcome it. Like, 100% you can overcome it. Like,
what's the biggest thing that
you
gives
have
you
that power.
they do. What's the biggest thing that gives you your confidence?
I think self-belief. I think something that's really helpful. Like, when we go through adversity, our confidence gets knocked. Quite often, our confidence can end up on the floor. I know mine did, with bloody scars again across my head. Look, like, I couldn't even look in the mirror sometimes without falling apart, or catch a glimpse of myself without falling apart. I didn't think I'd ever want to be in front of anybody ever again. Never mind standing on stage in a bikini, right? But something that's really powerful is to remind yourself of what you've already overcome. To like connect back to your inner strengths.
Yeah.
Connect back to who you are. Keep yourself off other stuff as well. Like if your confidence has been knocked, avoid social media for a bit. Avoid being around just other people's lives. Focus on yours. Focus on building yourself up. Remind yourself what you've been through. Anytime you forget it, like come back to that, because when we're going through stuff as well and our confidence has been knocked, we do forget who we are. Like we can forget how strong we are. We can forget, like, yeah, we can really forget ourselves, like forget what we're capable of. And so a really good way to help you feel stronger is to remind yourself of what it is you've already done.
Yeah.
What you've already like overcome.
I love that. And that's one of the things that I tell people too, and getting them to, like, even writing a list of 50 things you've achieved in your life, even from simple things like learning to tie your shoelaces, like the little things that are overlooked. Like, that's quite difficult to do as a child. If you ever, like, have you recently watched a child try to tie their shoelaces? They find it difficult.
It is. And that's another thing that we tend to do as well, Natalie, is not acknowledge our own stuff. Right? We look outside and we look at somebody else and we go, wow, how amazing, congratulations, like you're incredible that you did that. And then we achieve things. I was working with a client recently, she's been a doctor for years and she's achieved so much in her life, but she's never is acknowledging her own achievements. It's like, oh yeah, but I haven't done this. Oh yeah, but I could have done that. Oh yeah, but whoa, wait there. Slow down for a minute. Look at what you have done. And I always like to say to people, yeah, like look, find something that you've been through and ask yourself, what did it take you to possess to overcome that thing? Because connect back to that and love yourself for having that, for having that strength, for being able to accomplish and overcome what you have.
I love that. I think that's a really nice point to leave people on, to let them go and do that work.
Yes.
It's all well and good listening and learning, but unless you actually implement and take action, nothing's going to change.
Exactly that. Best thing to do after you've just listened as well is take action.
Go take action. So if you could give people one thing to do immediately from this, what would it be?
Yeah, remind yourself of what a powerful human you are. Like if you're going through stuff at the moment and you're not feeling like it, then connect back to it. Like whatever you're going through right now is just a moment in your life. It's just at most a chapter, right? It's not the whole book. And there are many, many more for you to write. So don't let what has happened like keep you stuck from being everything that you can be. Connect back to what's important and set some goals and make this next chapter count.
Definitely. And no, I love that. Thank you very much for joining us on the Confidence Mastery podcast. Where can people online stalk you? Because we agree with online stalking, just not in person.
I love that. So my name is Scarlett O'Connor. You'll find me on Instagram as Scarlett O'Connor UK. And my website is Scars to Strength. So if you'd like to look at how I can help you or the different offerings I have on there, there's a lot of free resources on there. Then you can go to www.scarstostrength.com.
Amazing. Thank you very much. We will put that in the show notes. Definitely do check Scarlett out. As you have just heard and listened to, she's an amazing woman doing incredible things and also now traveling the world. So really exploring what is out there in the world. So thank you very much for joining us today, Scarlett. Thank you to everybody listening. Make sure you share this with your friends, family, colleagues, people you don't even like, because, you know, helping others is a great thing to do. So make sure you download, share, and thank you very much. We will see you on the next one. Bye.
Thanks, Natalie. Bye.